Kishor.
Good to see you here. Good to see you here.
Great to see you.
Good to see you. We have some folks joining from UK, Utah, Michigan, Bay Area, and folks are starting to trickle in. So excited to have you here, Joe. I think I've told you this before. When I look at the marketing you guys do, it feels like there is a large team in place, but it's probably like a 5-member team actually doing the work. So I'm always impressed with what you guys do on the marketing side. So great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Kishor, and really appreciate it. I love what you all are doing, in terms of this event series. I would have loved to have this sort of exposure earlier in my career, and being able to share experience and learning as a way to pay it forward. So really appreciate you having me. As you said, I'm the CMO of Support Logic. I don't know if it would be helpful to provide a brief intro in terms of what we do. Support Logic is a B2B SaaS company and an AI platform that helps companies deliver better support experiences. Essentially, what we do is unlock all the signals that are currently sitting in support interactions, voice calls, texts, chats, emails, and we deliver predictions and insights that help companies deliver a better support experience and work better cross-functionally with anyone who touches the customer, product management, customer success, et cetera. And I've been on board 2.5 years leading marketing, basically built up the team from scratch. As Kishor said, we have a very lean and mean marketing team, currently have 5 people. This is out of about 120-ish company. We rely a lot on agencies, and we work very well cross-functionally. We're going to unpack a lot of our learnings here today. But as a brief background, I've been, in the industry a long time. B2B marketing has been, my focus, been around the areas of the different functions within marketing. Spent a decade in product marketing, which is a lot of what our emphasis is here today, for some large companies like VMware, and then spent really the last decade plus in SaaS, companies like Zora, Inside View, healthcare tech startup, and finally, most recently at Support Logic. So again, great to be here, and welcome questions, and looking forward to the conversation.
Appreciate that, Joe. Joe, on the product marketing side, I have a bunch of questions I want to discuss with you. Right? One is, at least in early stage companies like us, right, we're still figuring out what product marketing means, et cetera, et cetera. So what does product marketing, what areas does product marketing oversee? If we can start with that, that'll be helpful for us too.
Yeah. Product marketing, I think, means different things to different organizations depending on your stage. For example, the larger the company, the narrower and deeper the scope. Early stage company, scope is very broad, mile wide, and your challenge is to go deeper than an inch.
Right.
So we'll unpack that today. My short answer, funny but true answer, is product marketing at an early stage company owns everything and nothing at the same time. There's no sort of ownership model in early stage companies. You don't have these clear defined swim lanes. And I think I learned this the hard way, making the transition from large enterprise down into startup, is one of the keys to success is to be very agile, nimble, be able to dive into things, roll up your sleeves, make mistakes. It sounds very cliche, but product marketing has the opportunity to do so much for the organization. Synthesizing the product market fit. Early stage companies that are often driven very much on, as you know, Kishor, on the backs of founder and being founder led, making those initial sales. Everything is sort of intuitive in your founder brain. And then you get to a stage with the early investors where you say, great, we have product market fit. How do you take that to the next level? How do you get it to a point where you can scale? And as our CEO, Krishna, says, it's about repeatability in the go-to-market motion. And that's all about product marketing. What are the right messages that work? What are the sales motions that work? What are the demand generation strategies to drive predictable pipeline? Where are the stuck areas of the funnel, et cetera? So there's a lot of win-loss, bringing in market feedback. There's so much. And I haven't even talked about like pricing optimization and channels, things that product marketers at large organizations cover. But it's all about appropriateness for the stage of the company.
Makes sense, Joe. Joe, on that point, let's say, if there is a product marketing lead joining like a Series A, Series B company, right? Just had some product market fit, few hundred customers, right? What would your advice be on what they should do for the first 3-4 months in their role and set the right things up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my team loves to hear me say this all the time. When you join a new company, that first, I've experienced this. It's roughly 90 days. It's
Right.
1 quarter. It's sort of this magical period where you don't have blinders on. You're not yet drinking the Kool-Aid,
Right.
right? The Kool-Aid is everything looks great, and you're not challenging enough of what's working or not working with that outside in perspective. And so that's such a precious period of time that when anyone comes into the company, especially in marketing, but outside of that, I always advise them, like, give us your insight, give us your opinions, because now is the time to really recognize some outside things that can help us work. So to answer your question, first of all, 90 days, that period in terms of like making an impact and showing results, that's way too long. I think like 30 days is the new 90 days. And what I would advise any new product marketer coming in, it's really simple. Talk to customers and prospects. Again, it sounds very cliche, but most people don't do that, or they wait a long time to sort of build up some knowledge and credibility and trust. And what I like to do, and what I've done in the past and advise some of my new product marketers coming in, is, hey, just reach out to prospects and customers and tell them honestly, hey, I'm new. I want to get your fresh perspective, unfiltered. And generally the response rate is pretty high to that. And then I would also say, in the first 30 days, like, actually produce something. This sounds a little bold, but produce a messaging and positioning framework. Again, taking your outside in perspective. We all have an outside in perspective. Why did I join this company in the first place? So you can actually develop that, and it's going to get better and grow over time, but produce something initially. In one of my previous companies, when I joined as a VP of product marketing, in my first 2 weeks, we had our sales kickoff. I couldn't contribute anything meaningful in terms of content. So what I did was I hosted a panel of prospects and customers, and I benefited from those relationships for the next few years. Just because one of the important things down the road is customer advocacy. So having those conversations is super important. Lastly, write something, right? Beyond the messaging and positioning framework, write something external, a blog post, even why I joined, right? It helps you. It's a forcing function to clarify your thinking and solidify the process. And it helps to drive priorities. And then in the next 1 to 2 months, really drive internal alignment, understand the priorities, and that sets your agenda for that first year to be successful.
Got it, Joe. Joe, on that point, right? When you look at companies, that you advise or you've been part of, and if at all you look back and say, you know what, that company I'll score 10 out of 10 on product marketing, right? Like, you give us full score for them on the work they do. What kinds of things have they nailed that makes you give a full score to them? Like, what makes a company like, hey, this company has done a great job on the product marketing side?
Yeah, this is really really a good question, because there's sort of two lenses that you want to evaluate product marketing. I love the 10 out of 10 gift there. Objectively speaking, product marketing is typically measured by sales efficiency metrics, win rate, sales cycle time, etc. You can't really see that outside in. So when I look at our company's doing a good job, I look at the clarity of the messaging and positioning. Is it clear what the company does? And it's I love Simon Sinek's framework. Start with the why, and then the how, right? The what is the speeds and feeds. And a lot of product marketers who are coming up from either a technical role or a product role, right? They start with the what, the speeds and the feeds, and you actually want to come at it tops down. So nail the why and the how. And you want to see differentiation, whether it's we'll talk a little bit later about category development, but whether it's an existing category or a new category, how are you messaging effectively to differentiate what you do better than anyone else? Because everyone in an industry has competitors. Otherwise, there's no market, there's no category. And how you differentiate is so critical. And then you want to see strong customer experience throughout the journey. We're no longer in a, pre-sale, post-sale world, right? There's a continuous customer journey with SaaS subscription models. We're using usage-based pricing now at Support Logic. So what we land is a very small portion of the overall long-term customer success. So what does that experience look like throughout the journey? And then is there alignment between what the salespeople say and what your website says you do? That seems so trivial, but most companies fail there. And so there's a lot of things there. Alignment on demand gen priorities, key funnel metrics. There's a whole host of things that can indicate, are you really nailing the product marketing? Again, some of it's situational dependent, but that's what I look for.
Right. And also to your point, the differentiation aspect of things, it is definitely easier said than done. Like I said, like it just sounds so easy to say, like, hey, you know what, like how do we but it takes a lot of brainstorming and product roadmap sessions to actually figure out, right, hey, how can we tell a differentiated story to the market, but also how do we enable every team to speak the same language about why we are different compared to other players in the category. And it is definitely hard. Like at least that's what I felt like. It takes a lot of mind space and like discussions to make that happen. So I'm sort of glad that you sort of brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about it in two different buckets. The positioning, the strategy, and the story, the strategic narrative of the company is absolutely critical, and it's a CEO imperative. Product marketing, the head of product marketing, head of marketing can typically be the catalyst for that and be the quarterback. I've done this at a few companies now, and it is so important that you get alignment and buy-in to go invest in this initiative. And then there's a whole separate conversation we could have, and you should have with some others who are, uber experts at the positioning strategy. But the process is important.
On that point, Joe, I remember even Support Logic, went through a couple of sort of positioning changes after you came on board, right? What was the process like, and why did you make the change? If you can sort of give a quick overview, that'll be helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So digging in, when I came on board, I got intuitively what we did. Side story, way back in my career at a large tech company, I was a business analyst, and I was doing net promoter surveys and evaluating the support experience of the call center. So I knew, the limitations of surveys, right? Very low response rate. You're looking in the rearview mirror. You can't affect change, immediately. And so when I talked with our founder and CEO, Krishna, I immediately got what Support Logic did. And I saw the opportunity there and the value. And that's why I decided to join. When you looked at the website, though, we tended to get more into the speeds and feeds. We talked about ourselves as an intelligent support platform, which I think, even in Krishna's opinion, was limiting because it was like incrementally better than a support platform. And what was a support platform? A support platform was typically for B2B companies, your support ticketing system.
Zendesk, right? Zendesk. Right. Works. Yeah.
Service Cloud or Dynamics, right? A lot of them. And companies depend on them, and they're important, right? No knock on them. What wasn't coming through was what was Support Logic with the benefit of AI and workflow doing differently to add value to that support ticketing system. And that's where I started talking with a lot of companies, customers and prospects, chief customer officers, SVPs of support, and figured out that really what it was about was up-leveling the experience across the support and even customer success functions. And so I came up with this phrase or moniker, service experience platform, because it sort of covers the gamut of services. And to Krishna's credit, he proposed and we decided to go very, very narrow on support experience.
Right.
So support experience platform is what we deliver. That was sort of our version of the category name. The bigger work was backing into the strategic narrative, and it's where does this start, right? And I'll point people to a couple of references. Andy Raskin has a great blog out there. If you Google greatest sales deck ever, and it coincides with, part of my work and the time I spent at Zora, where we were building the category around subscription economy. And every strategic narrative has sort of the same ingredient points, right? There's a starting point, which is some big, profound change in the world.
Right. So true. Right.
Shift to subscriptions, right? Was a big one for us. In our case at Support Logic, it's the fact that, every business right now, it needs to be focused on the entire customer journey.
Right.
And the fact is, right, many of the interactions for companies happen through the support channels.
Right.
And that's just dying in a silo. So it starts with a current state, which is a big change in the world.
Right.
Then it leads into problems. What is getting in the way? And then you contrast that with
the promise.
If you want to be successful in making this journey to this future state, you need to do things differently. And it gets into some, again, it's another deep dive conversation, but in an early stage category driving company, the goal is to sell why change, not why you do what you do. It's why should you change, right? Because we're selling, right, even now at Support Logic, where we have a lot greater brand awareness, we're selling to people who, in companies, they don't have a competitive solution. It's just status quo. They're not doing things optimally. So you need to sell that why change message, and then you need to give them a roadmap to get there. What are the things you do? These are all steps before you even talk about your own product.
Joe, I think the point you just mentioned, evangelizing the change that is needed to get to the promised land, is one thing that I underestimated, in the company building journey. Like, I think that's so critical that I am realizing now how in companies the status quo is nothing. Like it's just bare bones, and you have to really convince them to make the change, and you need to have the story nailed down to make that happen. So I think that's so spot on. I can relate to it a lot.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing I'll mention, and this is the advice of Bob Wright from Firebird Consulting, who I've worked with several times, master at positioning, is your positioning story should only last for a couple of years, right? As the company evolves, the market evolves, right? The goalpost, the destination moves, and you need to move with it. You can't. So we're sort of hitting at that right now. Is what next? What next for Support Logic? I don't have the answer on that yet, but we're working on it.
That's very helpful, because we were discussing internally recently about the same exact problem, right? We want to, sort of have a different positioning, but I could only see it have for only 2-3 years. And there was someone who asked this question, hey, but this should be for the next 5 years, 10 years. And I didn't have the answer to it, but that's a good point to actually validate that these things should evolve in every 2-3 years. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Awesome. So there's one question I want to take from Paige, sort of, advice on getting alignment on positioning between sales and marketing, because marketing is aiming for a long-term messaging, whereas sales is trying to sell the product they have right now. and there's always like a slight disconnect that could happen. So how do you sort of get the alignment between these two?
Exactly. By the way, Paige, I'll acknowledge this is really, really hard with this support logic to this day. In fact, it still rings in my head. We have sales reps who say, "Oh, that's great positioning story, Joe, but that's like what Krishna says at an investor conference or says to an analyst on a briefing. That's not what I say to my prospect." And you need to have the confidence to call BS on that, because the reality is that messaging, that narrative, especially if you're in a new category and you're trying to be disruptive, you have to be bold and you have to be confident. And the truth is, if you're selling to an early adopter prospect, they're going to get it, and that's great. I see you have this, Kishore. You guys are already one of the leading edge companies doing this. Move on and this is how we do it. This is how we can help you. But you have to convince your buyer that there's a problem and that they want to change. If there isn't a problem and they're not committed to making a change, then whatever solution you're selling, it's going to be a really hard sell. So that's sort of how you get through and get alignment on what needs to happen. And then there's a lot of back and forth work of like, hey, the first call sales deck. This is, should it be 23 slides or 7 slides? By the way, it should never be 23 slides. And what exactly is the narrative and flow? And the other challenge is getting, sellers being consistent and all delivering that same message. Again, the point isn't to script your sales reps. No one wants to be or should be scripted, especially if you have a complex enterprise sale. But the point is that the takeaways that the prospect or customer is going to have are going to be consistent and is going to lead down the right path.
Joe, on that, no, this is great. Thank you for explaining this very succinctly. On the sales deck, right, Joe, what is the typical flow that you have in your deck, for example? Is it like this typical Andy Raskin, like, hey, this is a big change. Here is the problem that folks are facing. Here is the promised land, and here is our solution. Is that the typical flow? And how many slides are these roughly?
Yeah, it pretty much is that deck. We talk about the challenge where support experience is now important for every business. It's not just the problem is the support world of old is break fix, and support is seen as a cost center. And so, there's a lot of pressure to reduce costs and not a lot of thinking in terms of the long term. So that promised land is getting to a point where support experience transcends across the customer journey, and the customer experience is the support experience. And what's changed in the world that's driving everyone to that promised land are things like subscription models, usage-based pricing, product-led growth models, freemium, try before you buy. If you can, on a freemium model, I'm just throwing out a data point, if you can increase your conversion from 2% to 4%, you're going to kill it in terms of your growth curve. So supporting that early stage customer and figuring out what they need to make them successful is super critical. So I haven't even talked about our product and what we do, but that's setting the stage up front. And then literally in 5 or 6 slides, and happy to share it as a follow-up, we talk about, the need for something different to support this new world and the journey to the promised land, which in our view is a support experience platform. And we get into the speeds and feeds of, okay, what does it actually do and how does it help you?
Makes a lot of sense, sure. Joe, I think Madeline asked a question I want to ask you, but I'll still ask this question. What are some companies that you think are doing great product marketing at the moment? Anyone that you would score like 10 out of 10?
Yeah, that's a good one. Again, I'll just state that you have an inside out perspective and an outside in. So I don't actually know what their internal metrics are, but I'll mention a couple of companies that come to mind from my own buying experience. One is a company called Qualified, which is conversational AI and chat platform. And I had been working with them at a couple of companies But what I think they do really well is the clarity of the messaging and what they do, and tie it to the outcomes that they're trying to drive for customers. So specifically, if you look at there are a lot of chat platforms out there, and what they message on differently is pipeline. They help drive conversion, quality pipeline. It's in their brand name. And they do a really good job of walking through the process, like in the sales process itself. So that's one that comes to mind. And they do great customer marketing as well. So check them out. Another one that we have implemented recently at Support Logic is a company called Rippling, which is a unified HR platform for growing companies like Support Logic, who don't have a lot of resources and people to put on this. So what they did really well was they differentiated on their messaging in terms of what they did better than anyone else, which is this unified experience and helpful for employees, for customers, for ultimately shareholders. And then what they also nailed is channels. We actually got referred to them through our benefits provider, broker. And so that was super important, was having this unified experience with our benefits provider, and something that works for the company. And nailing both of these companies, by the way, this isn't related to product marketing, but they have a really great onboarding and customer success process. And it goes back to the point I made earlier around product marketing. One quality of good product marketing is, or output that you can observe, is a great customer experience throughout the journey. And product marketing can be, they're not going to do all of these things, but they can be a good ambassador and a good sort of driver of some of these changes to look at the customer experience across the journey.
No, two great examples, Joe. I couldn't agree more. I've personally looked at both these companies in terms of what they do, and they're doing an exceptional job. I completely agree with you on that front. One of our support leaders, says customer experience is equal to support experience. So I think that point seems to be resonating with our support leader.
That's fantastic.
Awesome. Let me. I think there are some questions on. Actually, I can take this question since it's a natural progression to the next question, Joe. What is sort of Support Logic's event strategy look like this year? What kinds of formats are you executing? Right? Any key learnings so far in 2023? I think this is a good segue to talk about the event strategy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and by the way, this is right. Goldcast's focus is events, and we are a happy Goldcast customer. I'll share briefly. I started my career in events. I was doing demand generation for B2B software company in late 1990s, to date myself, and we basically did live events, a series of 200 seminars across the U.S. It was U.S. based, 4 in different cities every week, 2 full-time presenters, salespeople on the road. It was our company's primary customer acquisition channel. And so this was the world of marketing that I grew up in. And so events have always been near and dear to my heart. I think what's been interesting in the last few years, obviously with the pandemic, there was a huge shift to virtual events. In fact, our big event that's coming up in 2 weeks, SX Live, we were going to do as a face-to-face live event. And we were literally coming back from, we had a company offsite in Napa. We're sitting on the bus. I'm with our head of finance. I'm with Krishna, our founder and CEO, like looking at this contract. And we were going to spend a lot of money to have this in-person event, because in-person events we find to be extremely valuable, and we were missing it for a few years. So we thought we were out of the woods. Turns out there's an Omicron surge.
Right.
And we said, there's no way we can have this. So we're going to shift this year to virtual. This is literally a year and a half ago. And so our first virtual event, SX Live, last April, that's when we decided to, use Goldcast to host the event. And we expected, just a few hundred people at most. First event, etc. We ended up having 1,300 people register and engage
numbers. Yeah.
throughout the event. We blew away our expectations. It was global. So we had people in Asia Pacific, Europe, around the world, and people of different functions: support, customer success, product engineering, executives, and frontline agents. So typically, if you get a frontline support engineer, they're not going to get permission to go out of the office and travel across the country for 3 days to a live event, face-to-face.
But they'll advocate for your platform internally, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So it was a very successful event. In the past year, we have incorporated in-person events as well. So we have an SX Live city tour. We're in 8 cities this year, and it's been fantastic. We did our first 2 just a couple month and a half ago in Seattle and Austin. We had 40 or 50 people in the support, in the success world, and we had a conversation, a panel about topics that were relevant for the industry. And I'll just say a couple more points about our event strategy. We started, when I joined a couple of years ago, having a couple of industry events per year. TSIA is a big one.
Right.
They are
Association for Support. Yeah.
And they are trusted with our audience. They deliver a lot of valuable research and advisory services to support and customer success practices. And they reach the top of the pyramid in terms of our ideal customer profile, the large enterprise tech companies. So we had these big investments, right? This is a major industry event. We were getting spread a little too thin. So we also wanted to diversify audiences. So we started doing our own events. We're doing the roadshows this year. The last element to this event strategy is it ties to our content strategy, which is such an important part, back to product marketing, of being able to understand what are the content, the right sets of content that are going to help buyers move through the journey. And so what we did was we said, we were actually good the first couple of years at these thought leadership events, 101 level events. What we need to do is, our buyers are very technical, support leaders and success leaders. And so we need to get down to the 201, 301 level, to use a university curriculum analogy. And so we started doing these monthly product webinars, 301 level, where we dive into a specific topic, like how to assign cases to the right agent. And we get support managers, we get technical buyers, the people who are really going to make this solution work and make it successful. And so our event strategy this year has a balance of all 3 of those.
That's awesome.
And we're continuing to evaluate, but we just are huge fans of events in terms of having that interaction with prospects and customers, and to build your brand and to drive not only thought leadership, but down to the technical content delivery, and really just support the entire customer journey from prospect through customer and beyond.
Joe, on it, no, that's first of all, this is impressive with a small team. How many folks in your events team do you have? I think you're 1 to 2 people.
We have 5 total marketers, and what we do is now that's going to, fingers crossed, grow this year, aligned with our own revenue expansion.
Right.
Our secret to success, we have a couple of agencies on board, content agency, event agency, that really help us, give us the executional lift. Right. So it frees up time to think and plan. Right. Although I would say we still need to free up more time to think and plan. And we also rely a lot internally. If you look at sxlive.com, it's a 3-day virtual event. We're going to have over 30 sessions,
right.
Same or higher number of speakers, and coordinating all of those requires the entire company. We have our customer success team and our account executives who have relationships with customers, who are cultivating these speakers and engaging with our audience out ahead of the events. And then the important thing with the event is the post-event follow-up.
Right.
Everyone is on deck to do that, right? To make this successful for us this year.
That's great, Joe. Joe, one question I had on the roadshow, you said that in every city you guys had like 40 to 50 people who come to these events. That's a good number of people for an
Mhm.
early stage brand. How do you guys get those people to come to the event? Like, what is the sequence of things that happen before the event? Is it like sales reach outs? You have a list of accounts? What exactly happens there?
Yeah. So first of all, and again, going back to the product marketing principle, identifying your target audience, right? Who
Mm.
is your ideal customer profile? Understanding. So again, because we primarily sell to the top of the pyramid, top 2,000 global accounts, we had a very clear definition of what our ideal customer profile is. And then we had Regina, who leads our event strategy, was brilliant, took the ICP and overlaid it with our market. And we looked at what are the cities where we have the best penetration of target prospects and customers, and then identified that list of actual people. And then we said, okay, we're going to go to these 8 cities, and here's the plan. We're going to have a sequence of outbound communications.
Ah,
So typical marketing communications, emails, there's a lot of social. Um, the panelists drive their own social, right? Especially if they're with known brands. And then we have everyone on deck, again, SDRs, AEs, CSMs, reaching out to their audience in these cities and driving people there. And that's the only way to make it work, in my mind.
no, for sure. And also, I'm sure that you will also have to comp SDRs differently because their goal is like meetings, but you're trying to drive registrations to these events. They know there is some.
Yeah, but those goals should be aligned, right?
Mm.
Getting someone to an event,
The same.
if they're a good target prospect,
It's
should
like a
lead to a meeting and have a higher propensity to
conversion.
drive meetings. And I always tell the SDRs, like, give to get, like giving of, hey, this is a great piece of content, or this is an event that could benefit you with nothing in return. I don't put hey, can we set up 30 minutes next week on that meeting, on that email? It's just give. And then when they're ready, you're right there to help them get that meeting.
For sure, Joe. Joe, one sort of, I think, let me see if there are more questions. Uh, I'll take a couple of more questions, then I have one other thing to
Sure.
cover. How do you strike the right balance between internal? I think this is more towards the product marketing side of things. How do you strike the right balance between internal and external focus on prioritizing elements on the features/development roadmap?
Yeah, this is a great question, Vince. And product marketing is right in here. This, in my experience, this is more sort of directly owned by product management. Nevertheless, at a smaller, high growth company, everyone is on board with this. Often, again, when you're founder led, right, Kishore, you can speak to
Right.
this. You're prioritizing things that your early customers are asking for, because they made commitments to you. And so you sort of have to, that may or may not align to what the market wants, the market that you're trying to go after. So I think what often happens especially in early stage companies, is that there's more emphasis on internal than external. And so product management and product marketing can really help to strike that balance by getting that external feedback, by doing things like win-loss interviews,
Right.
where you can understand, okay, these are a couple of deal killers in terms of feature gaps, and let's bring that into the conversation and prioritize. Maybe it's not a priority relative to everything else, but that's the conversation that you need to have.
Makes sense. Awesome. One more question, Joe, coming your way on the last point you mentioned on the SDRs. I think when giving, how do you measure the long-term impact? Like, there is show ROI on this gives. Like, how do you? That's. I think it's about the SDR thing that you mentioned. Yeah.
Show ROI on these gives. Yeah. So giving itself, like I wouldn't call give a campaign. So it's not like, Blake, our growth marketing leader, he looks at overall campaign performance and measuring ROI. Oh, here's Blake chiming
Yeah.
in. Awesome, Blake. He's beating me to it as usual. with the act of actually giving in terms of sharing a piece of content or a tidbit or an insight, it's that what we call commercial insight that helps your prospect. And I don't measure individual gives, so to speak. I measure what is the effectiveness that, in this case, an SDR can generate a meeting, can generate leading to a sales qualified opportunity, leading to a closed won deal. And that's what you have to measure in aggregate. And you can do it at the campaign level, but not specifically for these gives.
Awesome. Joe, I had one last question from your end before I let you go. I'm sure that you also have like some aspirational accounts that you want to get into, right? Like Adobe and like these big, large enterprise companies who can be like big contract value. Like how does what kinds of ABM strategy or tactics would you adopt to get in front of a company like Adobe, right? What are the joint sales and marketing motions that happen to get there? Like, would just like love to hear your thoughts on like what you guys have found successful.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Adobe. They're actually a strategic target account for us.
Okay.
And we're engaged with them at various altitudes throughout the company. And they have some very specific needs that are aligned to what we do. So to answer your question, the front end of a successful ABM outreach, right, which is there's whole separate sessions to be done about ABM, but we look at it simply as this: who is the right target audience that we're going after? And it's not our 2,000 global accounts. It could be 15 to 20 top accounts.
Right.
What are their needs? So let's really understand the account, either through market research, or there's a lot of B2B data intelligence tools out there that provide this insight. And how do we, who are the right people? So one of the things that growth marketing has to do, and revenue operations, marketing operations, sales operations has to do, is to do a contact build out against those accounts. When we do the what works analysis on some of our largest customers, in many cases, 25 or 30 people were involved in the deal. So we really need to build that account map out, because who you think might be the ultimate buyer and decision maker may not, in fact, be that role. And there's a lot of other people that have to be influenced along the way. And then there's a kind of parallel effort of tops down, starting with key executives, and everyone on our staff is aligned to strategic accounts, and we're doing outreach. I'm doing outreach as well.
Really?
And using LinkedIn and email and other tactics. And then the bottoms up of getting, like, this is why SX Live, we're targeting the, C-suite as well as mid-level managers and individual frontline support engineers, because they're all using and getting value from what we do. And then events are a key part of the strategy too, because sometimes the best way to engage an executive at an account we're targeting is to invite them to an event, maybe as a speaker. We had some prospects at our roadshows earlier in this year that just closed with us because they felt engaged, they felt part of this movement, and they wanted to be invested in this, and they got the confidence from being with their peers. So event strategy plays a big part in that.
No, that's very, very helpful, Joe. It's similar to how we think about it, but the fact that you are doing outreaches yourself, speaks a lot about the hustle that you guys are doing on your end. So pretty impressive stuff, though.
Yeah, it's all about hustle, and it's about getting everyone on board.
Right.
At every level in the company, everyone has to be doing this, pushing on this journey together.
Right. Awesome. Joe, I know we're running out of time. I know that you have other things to sort of get back to, especially your SX Live event that is coming up in a couple of weeks, which is obviously a very interesting event. But yeah, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say thanks for having me, Kishor. And this is a fun conversation. And yes, thanks, Reagan. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to, chat or, take on topics that may come up, questions, etc. I would just ask little shameless plug for Support Logic and SX Live. This is primarily a marketing audience. So you're not going to be buyers for what we do, but check us out from an event perspective. Share it if you think there's relevance for your company. Share it with your support and customer success leaders.
Thank you, Joe. And also, just want to say, we are big fans of Blake and Regina and your team. They are just incredible people who have helped us a lot along the way, and they hustle a lot. So I'm sure you know, but I just want to sort of give a shout out to them.
You're singing their praises. They're rock stars, and they're core part of what we do in our success.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Kishore. Take care. Bye.